The laughter started softly at first, the kind that hides behind polished desks and forced smiles, but it cut deep all the same as the single father stood alone in the marble-floored bank, his worn jacket damp from the rain and his tired eyes fixed on a screen that everyone else seemed to believe would expose his shame. He had come only to check his balance after a sleepless night of worrying about school fees, groceries, and the silent weight of promises he had made to his children, yet in that moment, surrounded by whispers and judgment, his entire life felt like it was being measured by the way others looked at him rather than by the sacrifices he had survived. Before the story unfolds further, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the quiet strength of ordinary people, take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to the channel Bright Hearts. Your support helps stories like this reach the people who need them most. He was not always invisible. Years ago, life had looked very different for him. He had once shared dreams with a woman he loved, built plans for a future that seemed secure, and imagined growing old in a house filled with laughter instead of silence. But life, as it often does, had taken a sharp turn. His marriage ended quietly and painfully, leaving him with 2 young children and a responsibility that felt heavier than any burden he had ever carried. The custody battles drained his savings, the legal fees ate into his pride, and the sudden reality of being both mother and father forced him to grow up again in ways he never expected. Nights became shorter, mornings harder, and every decision revolved around one simple question: how to protect his children from the storms he could barely withstand himself. He worked relentlessly, not in glamorous offices or high-rise buildings, but in places where effort mattered more than recognition. He fixed things others threw away, took freelance jobs no one wanted, and spent weekends learning new skills while his children slept beside him on a mattress that squeaked with every movement. His hands grew rough, his back ached constantly, and yet he never complained, because each small victory meant another meal on the table, another school uniform washed and ironed, another bedtime story told with a tired smile. To the outside world, he looked like a man barely surviving, but inside him lived a quiet determination shaped by love and responsibility. The bank visit was supposed to be routine. He needed clarity, reassurance, something solid to hold on to after months of uncertainty. But as he approached the counter, the atmosphere shifted. The staff's polite professionalism faded into thinly veiled impatience. Other customers glanced at him, their eyes lingering on his worn shoes and simple clothes, making assumptions without knowing his story. He could feel the weight of their judgments pressing down on him, reminding him of every time he had been underestimated, dismissed, or treated as if his struggles defined his worth. His thoughts drifted to the night he had nearly given up, sitting alone in the dark after his children fell asleep, calculating numbers that never seemed to add up. That night, he had opened an old laptop and revisited something he had started years before, a project born from a simple idea and abandoned when life fell apart. What began as a way to cope with loneliness turned into hours of focused work after midnight, fueled by coffee and the quiet hope that maybe, just maybe, persistence could still change his story. He taught himself, failed repeatedly, learned from mistakes, and slowly rebuilt something meaningful, all while the world slept and his children dreamed in the next room. Back in the bank, the tension was thick. The system processed his request slowly, each second stretching like an accusation. He stood still, refusing to let embarrassment win, reminding himself that dignity did not depend on approval. He had survived worse than this. He had survived heartbreak, exhaustion, and fear. He had survived for his children. When the balance finally appeared, it was not the number that changed the room first, but the silence. A heavy, stunned quiet replaced the laughter, and the air itself seemed to shift as realization dawned. The figure on the screen represented years of unseen effort, nights without sleep, risks taken quietly, and faith held together by love for 2 small lives depending on him. The wealth he had built was never about status or revenge. It was about freedom, security, and the chance to give his children a future untouched by the fear he once lived with. The mocking looks turned into confusion, then disbelief, as those who had judged him moments earlier struggled to reconcile their assumptions with reality. Memories flooded his mind, not of triumph, but of struggle. He remembered standing in grocery aisles calculating every purchase, choosing essentials over comfort. He remembered missing social gatherings because he could not afford gifts. He remembered pretending everything was fine when his children asked why things were different from their friends' lives. And yet, through it all, he had never let bitterness take root. He taught his children to respect others, to work hard, and to believe that character mattered more than appearances. As news of the balance spread quietly within the bank, attitudes changed. Voices softened. Smiles returned, this time forced by surprise rather than superiority.